contact between key members of the Trump campaign and the Russians.
And that brings us back, Cecilia Vega, on this point. Throughout the election, from the days immediately after the election, what we heard from the president and his team again and again and again, there were no contacts with Russia. We now know there were at least 100 contacts with Russia, and clearly, had all this information been available in real time, a very different world.
It was one of the, if not the first question I ever asked then President-elect Donald Trump at that press conference he gave right after the election on the ground floor of Trump Tower here in New York City. Did you or anyone on your team have contact with the Russians? And he turned back to me and said, no, absolutely not. We now know that to not be true. I'm struck, as I think are many journalists covering this right now, by the fact that this report validates much of the reporting that we've been reading and doing here at our own network and at among our competition in the newspapers as well. It really raises some, I think, credibility, big questions for the White House going forward about what we can and can't believe out of the press shop there when they've strongly refuted stories that we now know to be true. The president's involvement in that Trump Air Force One statement after involved in the Trump Tower, whether he or not he was involved in the statement that was written on behalf of Don Jr. If you remember that, it was such a big brouhaha back then. The White House had said the president had no involvement in that statement, and Robert Mueller says he was heavily involved. In fact, he helped write it himself. If I might, George, point out to our audience, page 236 in the second section, it gets at the president's mindset. He says several advisors recalled that the president-elect viewed stories about his Russian connections, the Russia investigations, and the intelligence community assessment of Russian interference as a threat to the legitimacy of his electoral victory. He cites Hope Hicks, who says that this was his Achilles heel, that the intelligence community's assessment that Russia had interfered with our election was President Trump's Achilles heel. They quote Sean Spicer, who was the first White House communications director, we all remember, who recalled that the president thought the Russia story was developed to undermine the legitimacy of his election. Aide after aide, Gates, former Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, recalling that the intelligence assessment came out when it came out, the president-elect was concerned people would question the legitimacy of his win. So as we go through these 400 pages and we wonder why and how all this could have happened, it's because the president was so very directly threatened by this investigation that was happening.
Remember that Ken Starr, and Kate and I were talking about this before, Ken Starr viewed it as an impeachable offense that the president lied to the public about certain facts on Monica Lewinsky. Now, Congress didn't end up taking that up, but the point is that there's a lot of evidence now that the president and his team lied to the public.
But and that's a significant difference between the laws they were working under. Ken Starr was required to report to the Congress.
Yep, that's right. But there is a secondary way to read this report that will be done in the coming days. The first is, okay, well, what are the facts that were produced about collusion, conspiracy with the Russians, and obstruction? The secondary way is, how many times did he lie to the American public? Yeah. Because these are the words not of anonymous sources, Don McGahn. Right, his own lawyer, Hope Hicks. I mean, I was just reading the passage. It's on page 71 of the second section, where in really what was a shocking move to many people, the president had the foreign minister of Russia and the Russian ambassador into the Oval Office, a security nightmare, many people thought, and supposedly said, Comey's off my back, he was crazy, got all the pressure off of us now, and so the White House never formally denied it, but kind of pushed reporters away from that. Don McGahn testified to it right after the meeting. He talked to the president about it. And it was confirmed. That's what the president told the Russians. Now we can do business.
That will be one of the big questions going forward. Again, a lot of this, as Cecilia pointed out, has been reported before, absorbed, it appears, by at least parts of the American public. Will it take on a different character now that it's been ratified by the special counsel? I want to bring Chris Christie back in because, Chris, as I say, you're a former prosecutor as well as a former governor of New Jersey, and you wanted to weigh in on this question, this section of why and how Robert Mueller chose not to reach an ultimate conclusion that the president obstructed justice.
Yeah, George, I agree with Dan's analysis earlier that the OLC opinion plays even more of a role in it than was initially thought. And when you go back now, if you look at the report in the summary section on page 2, look at the third point. What he says in there is that the ordinary means for an individual to respond to an accusation is through a speedy and public trial with all the procedural protections that surround a criminal case, an individual believes he was wrongly accused can use that process to seek to clear his name. In contrast, the prosecutor's judgment that crimes were committed but that no charges will be brought affords no such adversarial opportunity for public name clearing before an impartial adjudicator. So I think what he's also saying here is another reason we didn't do it in terms of saying we thought he committed a crime without bringing charges is that we're tarring him without giving him a public forum opportunity among a jury of his peers to be able to clear his name. And the reason he can't do that is because he can't be charged under the OLC opinion. So I think the OLC opinion played a much more key role in Bob Mueller's determination than we were originally led to believe when you really carefully read page 1 and page 2 of that report.
Can I press you on that then? How do you explain the quite large difference